And then click that button so that the lighting is better. Because there's no dark mode with StreamYard, apparently. So,
indeed.
And whenever you have it on the main screen and it's like a 32-inch monitor, it, no, not 32. 30? 28? Whatever this thing is. I don't know. Big monitor.
Big monitor.
Yeah. Drink it straight.
All right, everybody.
I try to keep some kind of track of how much I'm drinking. Especially when I have to work tomorrow. So,
yeah, that's probably smart. Well, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am one of your hosts. I don't have an adjective today because I just didn't come up with one and it felt right. Your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel.
And I'm another one of your It Just Feels Right hosts, your Vajan Mahale, Andrew. But what doesn't feel right, but is also right at the same time, is the fact that our Soravan Mahale is out in the field doing Soravan and Mahale type things. Josh is not with us tonight in flesh, but he is with us here in fleshlight. I mean spirit.
Jesus.
He sends his love. He sends his taint. It smells, but it's still here.
Yep.
So sounds like I have misplaced my muddler. I don't actually have a muddler. I'm assuming you're talking about like the pedestal, the modern pedestal type thing for making drinks. The pedestal part of it. If you want to know why I brought up muddlers, head on over to blacktowerpod.com and check out the button that says Patreon. And for just $1 a month, a whole dollar a month, or less,
it's like 73 cents or something if you do a yearly or whatever.
Yeah, if you go ahead and do it in a year, I think it's set to be like a 10 to 13. I think it's a 13% discount on the yearly rate. So add up whatever you would spend for a year.
Not 70 something.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because I think it comes out to $10.87 for a year if you do family member at $1 a month. But that goes all to help support what we do here at the Black Tower Podcast, and all of that goes right back into the podcast, whether it helps pay for kind of unplanned travel things, like not anything big like plane tickets yet, but like Lyft rides from the airport to like JordanCon, WattCon, or recording things, as well as new equipment. And if we have to commission somebody to make intro songs or any kind of artwork or intros, that kind of stuff for us, that's what it all goes for.
Yep.
As well as getting the lovely stickers and different merch items that we send out to many of our fantastic patrons. And it also lets you listen live to what we're doing every Tuesday night when we're recording in our Discord. So if you want to join that illustrious crew, blacktowerpod.com, look for the button that says Patreon, click it, be amazed, join us, and just like Fry from Futurama, shut up and give me your money. Or that's not the quote. Send us the meme and say, shut up and take my money. But you get what I mean. There you go. Marshadi posted it in the live chat. So.
Indeed. Once you're done over at Patreon and you have decided whether you are going to join us in the Black Tower or not, which is entirely fine either direction, and you've gone on a rabbit hole down what other content creators are on Patreon and you've decided whether you're going to join them or not, feel free to hop on over to blacktowerpod.com, where you can find all of the information that you need /want to find out about the Black Tower podcast. All of our socials are there. Also, all of our merch shops are there. Basically, as I said, everything that you would want to know, including details for this year's Gathering Madness, which is going to be October 13th and 14th in at Evermore Park in Utah. So go ahead and check out details. Indeed. So check out the details there on the website. And yeah, feel free to hang around there for a little while before you come back to the episode, or whatever.
Sorry, I'm having fun with
light bounce, bro.
Yeah, dude, it's set to auto white balance because anytime I do it, it either makes like the video look really red or really blue. And so if I just hold up a paper towel,
the white balance gets super off. Jesus.
Sorry. There's a TikTok clip from this one, just Andrew being stupid. Which you can find those clips in every episode of the Black Tower podcast, which we host on Podbean. And you can watch the last 5 or listen to the last 5 on blacktowerpod.com as well. With all that being said and done, definitely do check out the information for the Gathering Madness 2023. It's going to be dope. It's our biggest one yet. And we'll be celebrating the completion of 5 years of people listening to us talk for some unknown reason. Oh,
yep.
It still boggles my mind. I thought about this the other day and I was like, I can't believe we've been doing this for like 5 years, give or take a couple months.
Yeah.
This is wild.
It's craziness.
So, yeah. But we'll reminisce more about all that and talk about some of the cool stuff we've gotten to do or we want to do, all that kind of stuff at that celebration. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some different cool stuff. We're going to be talking about the old cartoon, the Thundercats and Lion-O. Wait, sorry, wrong show.
Aww.
I just like how he said Thundercats are hoes.
Jesus.
Isn't that what he meant? Thundercats, hoes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's what he meant. Give me sight beyond sight. All right, and let's go ahead and spoiler warn this one. That was my way of talking while I looked to see which spoiler warning I was supposed to be doing. And now I'm talking because I need to find it on my stream deck because I don't. There it is. All right, I'm ready now. All right, here goes this episode of spoiler warning, courtesy of our friendly neighborhood fact checker, Mihail.
Welcome to the Black Tower, a Wheel of Time podcast. All right, let's check this one. This podcast will likely be spoiling books 1 through... Oh, what's this? An envelope addressed to me. No name, though. Let's see what's inside. Oh my. This podcast will likely spoil all the books in the series, and apparently being a Patreon will expose you to information that should be left unseen. Protect yourself by pulling that spoiler condom all the way on. And I need a drink. That's way more of Andrew than I have ever wanted to see. Why would you braid it down there?
The answer to that question and more can be found at the Gathering Madness. Specifically, Saturday, October 14th, in a very shady corner of Evermore Park.
That would be the most appropriate place for it.
Imagine we get the call now that it's just like, yeah, y'all can still do the thing, but Andrew can't come.
Well, I feel like you might still be able to attend. You just probably can't find shady spots to come,
I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. And when you're a sub-minute man like myself, it's hard to stop.
There you go. I mean, literally, that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah, I'm not fast or premature. I'm just time efficient.
Yeah, there you go.
What are we talking about?
All right. So today we are talking about sort of a little bit of a conceptual thing. That is a question that I discovered / got asked / have now asked a couple of people in person, and think is sort of a fascinating understanding of people and what they think about the story and things like that. And it goes really well with a couple of weeks ago at WatCon. Jeez, like 2.5 weeks ago at this point.
Like an eyeball.
I know, right? The we actually got a wonderful, amazing reading from Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. That was the very famous flicker, 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 flicker portal stone scene where Rand transports himself and Varen Sedai and a number of Shanaran soldiers and Matt and Perrin and Loyal and Huron from where they are in Kyrian? A little out.
Outside of it.
It's like outside of
Either
Kyrian.
way, if you thought it was impressive to hear in the audiobooks, you should have heard it live.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
even more impressive because if it's like in the audiobooks, you're like, okay, you can try multiple takes, you can maybe splice things together, but doing it in one shot without stopping in person, incredible.
Well, and of course, one of my favorite things is in the audiobooks, there's almost exclusively one voice you hear because they switch off chapters and they switch off POVs, but they don't really do a lot of switching off of narration and dialogue like in that paragraph or in those paragraphs. So it's almost exclusively either Michael or Kate.
Yeah.
And when they're both there and they're both sitting in the room, they both do it together and it's that much more extra, which is really nice. But anyway, this scene has always fascinated myself and clearly lots of other people because it is definitely one of the most famous Wheel of Time scenes. Especially after having read the books all the way through, or at least
they were leaving
minimum.
Sorry. They were just outside of Stedding Sofu.
Stedding Sofu, that's right.
Which is just outside of Kyrian. Or technically it's not in Kyrian the city, it's in Kyrian the territory or nation.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I'm close-ish, but always just a little off.
Close enough for Black Tower business.
I'm just like that. Just a little off. Always. All right. Anyway. So yeah, this scene is very famous and it's really cool and it's really thought-provoking when it comes right down to it. Where Rand, since we see it from his perspective, as they are sort of traveling through the portal stone, and he is channeling through the stone to get them from where they are to a portal stone in Falma, or in Arid.
Toman Head.
On the Elmith Plain. Toman Head.
Yeah. Trying to get some head from Toman. Apparently he's really good. They named a whole place after him. So.
Oh, yeah. He lives or sort of sees a number of lives of him not announcing that he is the Dragon Reborn, of him not fighting against the Shadow as the dragon, all of these different things of how life could pan out or could have panned out had things not happened exactly the way that they did in the books up till that point. And presumably into the future, because many of them he sees himself grow old, or at least older, and different events happen. So, all of that to say, one of the things that we learn about the Portal Stones is that they are able to transport you basically to other dimensions or other worlds or other parallel realms,
if you will,
or whatever, right? Into other possibilities, other lives that you could have lived, or really in this, again, this is where it gets muddy because it doesn't show us that. It shows us Rand and Selene and Loyal and Huron travel from our world into an alternate world where the Trolloc Wars ended with the Trollocs winning, basically. Or at least that's the position that they take given what they see. So this has been sort of the question of Clearly, they go into another world that is somewhat similar to our own, but where different events seem to have happened that change the course of history and change the world to be different. And they're running around doing things in that world until they come back to the one where sort of Rand and them come from, which is ours.
Mm-hmm.
So this presents a bit of an interesting question of, given that the portal stones seem to be able to transport you to other places physically, what are the visions that Rand and all of the Shanaran soldiers and Varen and everybody are seeing? Are they alternate realities that could have been, that are just pushing them into their heads, that they just sort of see other possibilities for their choices, and they're like dream sequences that they're sort of that feel very realistic in their heads? Is that their sort of brain going into another one of these worlds and seeing the life that another one of them actually lived or is living in that other world, and they're just getting a glimpse into that world through the portal stone? Is that sort of, a just completely fantasy that isn't actually happening anywhere in any dimension, and it's just a possibility of something that could happen? This is sort of the question of, what are the metaphysics behind those visions? What are those actually caused by? Because there are a lot of theories as to what they are, and there's a lot of sort of thought processes as to how to look at them. And I've always been sort of a fan of these sort of like, infinite universes, the multiverse theory of all of those lives that Rand is seeing, all of the ones that we're seeing through Rand's eyes in the POV, are other Rands that are living in other parallel universes. And all of them are doing these things and losing to the Dark One, which is why over and over again you hear the, I win again, lose Theron. But again, I've also heard a number of different takes on it. So I wanted to bring this up to, Andrew and Josh, or in this case, just Andrew, because you are here and I love your thoughts on fucking metaphysics. So
Sometimes I have
sort of, you always have thoughts. Sometimes they're mind-boggling. Sometimes they're interesting.
and other times they're absolutely just fucking wrong.
I didn't say that, but
Doesn't mean they're not fun. Sometimes.
But yeah, so what are sort of your thought? Like, have you ever sort of thought about whether those visions are actually sort of real, or whether they're just, dream sequence? What is sort of your thought as to what those are, where they're coming from, and why Rand and company are seeing them in this situation? What are your thoughts on what's going on here?
So as to whether or not I've ever thought of it before, the answer is honestly no. Not until it was brought up, and that was thinking about it. Like, I think because this is one of the things I think was brought up kind of during an episode.
Partially, yeah.
Partially, at least, yeah. And I didn't really think about it then, and I didn't really think about it today because. I mean, I definitely thought about it this week because we prepare for episodes. I've been thinking about it for the last 7 days at least. But I have spent a fair amount of time pondering and pontificating on the nature of the portal stones and the mirror world and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so you're already 90% of the way there.
Yeah, close enough. Because like it necessitates if the flicker scenes were a glimpse of a reality, then it means that these worlds have to be real. They can't just be images or like, what if scenarios if they were real. Clearly. So it has to be this kind of like have you seen the Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Yeah.
Yes.
So the dream walking that that Scarlet Witch does, or
And
Wanda
that
Maximoff,
Doctor
and that
Strange
Doctor
does
Strange
at some
does.
point. Yes. Yeah.
So it has to be something like that, because the way it works and then is they don't just put themselves into another world. Good to know that my hand is so light in color that it affects the auto white balance.
Yeah, mine is just.
I don't know. Maybe
I
it's
have
not as
enough
severe.
lights in this room.
We do it like, okay,
That's
I had it
better.
a little too bright. Well, because I can see like the pixels kind of like shimmering a little bit because it's a little dark.
Yeah, right.
I need better light. Anyway, go join Patreon so Andrew can buy better light. I don't want to spend like $150 on an Elgato light, so I got this one.
Yes, indeed.
It's still good though. It's still good. One of the
Yes.
Logitech ones. Anyway, what was I saying? But
dream walking.
They don't just like put themselves in an alternate reality or an alternate world or a parallel universe. They put their consciousness into the body of themselves in that mirror world or that mirror universe. But it doesn't seem that, like, the weird thing about that is like it's different because they can choose whose body they put themselves into. Because Doctor Strange
and
chooses.
They also have control over that body, whereas this is really they're watching a story unfold without really seeming any control over it. But yeah, I mean, I still like that sort of reference between.
They're also aware that like this isn't their reality. That they're still cognizant of this not being reality. The thing about the flicker scenes that makes it so compelling that they are potentially real is the fact that until they are back in our world, and even then it takes time for everybody to kind of come to grips with it, they can't tell the difference until they are back in our world. Like they can't act like whenever they talk about living the different lives, like they don't talk about them as if like I saw a different life, like until they're back. When they're actively
they're
in
living
it, or presumably because we only get to see Rand's point of view,
correct,
as he goes through several lives.
Well, we do get a comment from Ingtar as well, and actually another comment from Varen at some point, describing a little bit of what they went through. But yes, we only get to see it through Rand's eyes.
Well, we get a sort of comment from Matt. I believe we also get a sort of comment from Perrin.
That's true.
We get more of about the same level of comment from Ingtar, and Varen goes like she's going to go into it, but she stops herself like she so frequently does, and doesn't really say much.
So later, interestingly, one of the things that I love about this scene is that it comes back, because actually Varen says when she is, thank God we're full spoilers because I love this part. Varen, near the end of the books, where she has the conversation with Egwene and outs herself as Black Aja, legitimately says that part of the reason that she's doing it this way, and part of how she knew that this would work, was that she got the idea from the Portal Stone.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, we sort of see that like this come back, because Ingtar, one of the reasons that he goes and sort of kamikazes and sacrifices himself for the Dragon Reborn, for the seals, for the horn, all of these different things to allow Rand and Matt and Perrin to get away, is that he has this experience through the Portal Stones and then is like, I can't get away from this, but at the very least I can do some good. And then Varen kind of says the same thing in a very different way, obviously, and like does it a very different sort of method. But in the end, both of them are kind of standing there being like, the Portal Stone kind of made this possible in some way. Like the flicker kind of made this possible. And I love that so much. Because again, Ingtar's is like, Jesus. Ingtar's is almost immediate. Because he gets a chance to sort of
I'm sorry, like the fact that it keeps flickering is like kind of fucking with me.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find like There is no okay. Low light compensation.
That's good.
There we go. Low light. I'll turn that on.
There you go.
One of these days,
yeah,
I'll find
Ingtar-
settings and fucking leave them alone. Every time you change a light, you have to fuck with your webcam settings.
That is correct.
I don't know. Maybe I need best
But yeah,
to fix my setup.
I love the fact that we get sort of Ingtar's response to the Flicker scene almost immediately. Like it's like 4 chapters later or something ridiculous like that. And then of course we have to wait for books to get Varen's response to it. But again, this is one of the reasons that Robert Jordan is so good at this.
Yeah. Well,
that idea of put this in book 2, revisit it again in a way later book. And so
you have several ramifications that go on. Like Ingtar's is the most immediate because yes, this is a big part of the reason why Ingtar, because he's muttering after this that he walks in the light, and that's where it's one of the first moments that I think most, if not a fair number of readers first go, huh.
Yeah.
He's a cooking up of something.
Right.
There's a good Family Guy reference for you if you've seen that episode. Matt's payoff comes later in after Dragon Reborn, in book 4.
Shadow Rising.
Yeah. Where he's trying to get away from Rand, and then he resolves himself to doing stuff to help Rand because of this whole like I'd never betray you, Rand kind of scene. And it helps Perrin more subtly but more continuously, because this is a big reason why Perrin comes to terms with his status as a wolf brother and accepts it. Because he probably saw some lives where he refused it and people died because of it, or they lost because of it, or
he refused it and he turns into a wolf.
Yeah, he goes like no,
or like accepts it too much, and yeah.
So things like that. And then of course Varen, there in was it Veins of Gold? Where that happens. But we also see, just to point this out, because I do this all the time. This is also the scene, or technically scenes, I guess, where we get the most misquoted line of dialogue from Wheel of Time, I think. And it's the "I win again, lose there." Not the quote.
Yeah.
The quote is
not the quote.
I have won again, lose there.
Yes.
It's just like the "No, Luke, I am your father."
Yeah, right.
I do this all the time. Do I think it sounds better? I win again, lose Theron? Yes, I do. But it's technically I have won again, lose Theron.
Well, and when it comes right down to it, again, it's that sort of same spirit without actually being the exact quote, which is why nobody corrects it. Because if it was actually like, if it was actually wrong, like if it was like, "No, Luke, I was your father," like that's a little weirder. Like
I no longer am.
Like, yeah, no, I'm not claiming credit for this anymore.
I've removed my DNA from your body.
But again, it's definitely sort of along those lines of that spirit rather than words. But you're right, it is absolutely I have won again, lose there.
And then we pretty much see just how this scene is mainly us watching Rand go through different lives. Fucking more shiny. We also see essentially the same sort of thing happen in A Memory of Light when Rand is struggling with the Dark One, because they battle back and forth. Well, Shaitan takes a turn, and then Rand takes a turn, showing each other the world without the other. And I think that those worlds are just as real as the Flicker worlds.
Okay.
Meaning if the Flicker worlds are real, then so are the worlds that Rand and Shaitan show each other, which I believe is completely possible, giving an infinite multiversal space. But for me, where it ties together, again, it hinges on
is the rug. Because the rug is really what's tying the room together.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. I've got a rug back there, and it really does tie the room together a little bit. Because a lot of my stuff is like black and red in color. I mean, because it's kinky and it likes that. All right. You don't bondage. You don't bondage your rug. Like, come on. How do you show your rug that you love it? Why do you think there's all these old
Motherfucker.
habits of taking and throwing rugs over clotheslines and hitting them with the little things to knock the dust out of them? But no. So before I read the absolute evidence that Morshadi is imparting on us right now,
Yeah, right.
um, we know that Teleron Riyadh, the world of dreams, is the closest mirror world to our own. And I don't know if it's ever confirmed that it is also where most of the mirror worlds, if not all the alternate mirror worlds, converge together, or kind of where they're linked together. I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
because
I've
of
always
that,
viewed Teleran Riyadh as a like grand central station of all
yeah,
of the different worlds rather
Mhm.
than actually sort of being one itself.
Mhm.
I mean, like, again, in some ways the definition of that also means that it is one,
Yeah.
but like I almost feel like it's outside of that whole equation
Mhm.
rather than being part of it. But yeah,
Oh,
continue. Sorry.
my whole thought about why it's so easy and why you're able to do all the things in Teleron Riyadh that you can, there it goes again. Um, I'll, I'll figure this out eventually. The reason why you can do
don't
all
worry
the
about
things
it.
there is because it's a world where all possibilities converge. So whenever you simply will things to happen, you are simply willing that reality from the infinite multiverse of realities to be what presents itself or be what becomes the most concrete for you. And whoever has the strongest will wins out in that argument. Um, but as part of that, I think the flicker scenes and ultimately the showdown between the Dark One and Rand are
Mhm.
making use of the same kind of mechanics.
Okay.
It's just the same ultimate mechanism through different access ways. If you know, because in that
Sure.
moment they're doing this, Rand and the Dark One are existing outside of space time. They have pulled themselves in the spaces in between the pattern.
Mhm.
Um, and whenever you exist outside of space time, you can then reach and touch anywhere that is space time, assuming you have the ability to, reach out and touch it. You're not like, I don't know, in a prison for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Or technically in a prison and the next moment not in prison because there is no concept of
Right,
time for
yeah.
you. But you can reach and touch anywhere, and I think that that's kind of how that works. So that is a very long way of giving the rationale behind why I think that the worlds they're seeing are real, but the portal stone, instead of actually putting you physically into that world, it lets you look
Sure.
into that world, kind of like the pensive does in lets you look into memories in like Harry Potter,
Mhm.
where you're there, but you're an observer.
But
You
you're
can't
not
affect
there. Yeah,
anything, and it puts
exactly.
you into your own kind of life. And it seems, not seems, it definitely is tied to your own soul or nature, and it just throws you in different random spots. Now I'm going to stop talking so that you can talk, and so that I can also read the evidence that Morshadi has posted.
Right.
It probably makes half of what I said wrong.
No, it actually doesn't.
No.
Really. It doesn't necessarily support it, but it definitely doesn't go against it. Like I think that it's pretty neutral.
Mm,
It's good information, and I appreciate it from Morshadi. Again, our fact checker Mihail is doing an amazing job, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say that any of this supports or doesn't support that particular line of thought. So here's actually where, and please feel free to inundate me with questions if you sort of think of them and want to do whatever.
all right.
But that actually gives me sort of three additional questions that are all smaller than the first in some ways, but also sort of equally as just getting information and thinking a little bit more about this and broadening the scope. Um, so let's start with the first two. Number one, given that sort of thought process about about the portal stones being able to transport your consciousness and let you view those other lives, again, we get sort of a bad, quote unquote, because it's not really bad, but a bad example of this particular phenomenon in the books, because Rand and Celine and Huron and Loyal go to a mirror world where presumably they don't exist in some ways, because they're running around and there really kind of aren't people. Like, it feels like this is a world where sort of life as it is currently known is wiped out, or at least that is a suggestion that is made for that mirror world. So my question to you is, when you go from a mirror world, or from our world into a mirror world through a portal stone, do you think it actually makes two of you if there's already a you in that world? Or do you think you transfer your consciousness into the you that's in that world?
I don't think that you inherently take over the consciousness of the you in that world.
Okay.
I had a full thought on why, because I was thinking of it as you were asking the question. I was like, "This is where I'm going to go." No, yeah, I don't think you do take over that consciousness, because I just don't see why you would, because the whole
Okay.
one of the big things about the Flickr scene is that even though they're not well versed in how these things work, though there's a little bit of an eyebrow raised to at least a portion of that, thanks to Varen identifying something going wrong.
For
And
example, yeah.
she mentions that the biggest problem is that Rand tried to take them straight from outside of setting Sofu in their world to Toman Head in their world. And she was like, "You shouldn't have done that. You should have just taken us into a mirror world, and then we could have gone and whatever." She was hoping that they would find one of the worlds where time passes more slowly in comparison to the world they're in. So I don't think you just take over the consciousness. I think that that's part of the danger in using the portal stones. That if done incorrectly or incompletely, if you're like more so projecting more of like your consciousness, or like you use too much spirit in the weave, then maybe that's what happens, that you kind of like just backseat the consciousness. And maybe there's even the risk that if you do it wrong enough, you lose yourself to that consciousness in that mirror world. And that's part of the danger of the portal stone, which
That's
is
fair.
terrifying to think of, that you could just fuck it up so bad that you just lose yourself to that world.
Yes.
But you would never know.
Ooh, that's a new question. But I will ask that in a moment. I will remember it. So, my other question actually has to do with something that got said about all of this, about like the sort of string theory and like world lines and things like that. So
Yeah.
we often talk about. All right, so I'm going to give some context for this because I think that it actually does somewhat require it. The sort of general thought in the community at this point, especially given Robert Jordan's proclivities for these for science and physics and things like that, as well as sort of the description that we get of this book in the story and whatnot, is that the book of translation, which is in the care of the Ogier and presumably brought them to Randland, though none of them actually is old enough to have remembered that happening or anything, is sort of is a way to transport yourself from other star systems or planets or whatever to other places. Because what I've sort of heard is a lot the theory that the Ogier are in a lot of ways just aliens that came to the Earth that contains Randland. And then if they were to use the book of translation again before Tarmangaiden, they would just be sent to another part of the universe. That is sort of the prevailing theory. So my thought about sort of like the portal stones and what we know of them, as well as, again, just the absolutely minuscule amount of information that we get from about the book of translation, as well as the suggestions that the Ogier make and things like that, is what is your thought on perhaps the Ogier not really being aliens as in they come from another planet necessarily, but given sort of a ridiculous number of parallel universes, not necessarily even infinite, but at least large enough, that the Ogier actually don't necessarily come from another planet, but from another parallel universe, and they just didn't exist in this one until they brought themselves here using the book of translation, and then presumably the book of translation would then take them to another parallel universe. And the reason that I bring this question up is that presumably in the Age of Legends, or even possibly in the First Age, so pre the Age of Legends, humanity had figured out space travel, but then also magic and portal stones and the ways and things like that. And so in that sort of vein, obviously in Age 3, Varen knows that the portal stones exist and knows that they were made and knows that sort of these were some of the ways that they were made. But of course, all of those informative kind of things, all of those user manuals, all of those whatever, are lost to time.
Yeah.
So, do you think maybe the book of translation could be a sort of alternate copy of the sort of string theory that created the portal stones? Or do you actually think that it's really more of those are kind of two sides of the same coin, about one sort of being within the universe travel and the other one being interdimensional travel?
Got you.
If that makes sense.
A couple points. First, on the book of translation. So More Shoddy, he posted his thing about it, and that I was gonna bring up. The legend is that it will take you to other worlds.
Okay.
But we don't know if that means different planets within this system or this reality, or
Correct.
alternate reflections or mirror worlds of this reality. I hinge on the latter, that it would be alternate realities.
Okay.
And then maybe there's some movement in there as to which world they go to.
Sure, because alternate
the other-
realities includes also presumably a shit ton of planets as well, in some ways. But yeah.
The other point is on the portal stones. They're considered artifacts. They existed before the Age of Legends, to the point where even the folks in the Age of Legends, they didn't know how they were made or where they came from. They already existed. But it was the study of the portal stones that inspired the male Aes Sedai taken by the Taint to create the ways.
Yes. That part I was, yes.
Yes. So that part is very much true. But yeah, portal stones already existed, because I believe Baird even talks about how the records they have from the Age of Legends are very scarce, but they do reference to portal stones, and they have discovered through those records that the portal stones were a mystery even in the Age of Legends as to where they came from and how they were made.
Correct.
Which, for all we know, could be something created in this world, because they are made of stone. and they've been here a very long time because we don't know if there is an end time where Ogier Sung Stone starts to fade, because we've seen where it can be damaged and faded in the ways. Oh well, no, that wasn't Ogier Song Stone, so disregard that. Not in the ways. It wasn't.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, those guide stones weren't made by the Ogier, but these, which is just a thought that I had, maybe the portal stones were either created or came along with the Book of Translation when the Ogier initially arrived, as a way to where, like, okay, yeah, you can kind of hop around and find a new place if you need to, or you can visit old places or something like that. Because I don't remember, because there's no way to know initially how, if the portal stones were co-located either next to or even potentially in steadings. It seems counterintuitive they would be in steadings, because everyone we know right now has used channeling to activate them, but there's nothing saying.
But at the same time, well, it's also a question of when did the Ogier come and when did the steading become a thing? Because
it wasn't quick, because they take their time.
They do, but that's actually sort of a new question.
Ogier,
in some ways, is sort of now is a bit of a question of, do you think the portal stones actually had something to do with the Ogier coming here? Because that's a thought of like, yeah, no, exactly. And so
I think it's a byproduct of a better understanding of the Book of Translation. Because if the Book of Translation can be used to guide you on how to jump realities, then there's nothing necessarily supporting or disproving the concept that you could use the same thoughts, mechanisms, theories to create objects. Because the Ogier, regardless, obviously have some kind of mystical power about them, some ability to influence the world unnaturally around them. To the point where
and such,
to where they love singing with the trees and making stuff out of wood, and they're incredible at it. But they're known in the world for their work with stone, their ability to make stone seem almost alive. So I don't think there's anything too crazy about thinking that the Ogier sung these portal stones into existence. Early on, like shortly after they first arrived, because and it would also lead into the idea of their longing for home, and the portal stones maybe being a way for them to maybe seek out their original home, or where they came from, wherever that longing may come from.
Oh, I was actually doing it a little bit pre that, in terms of my thought process. There was actually that the portal stones were made and in this world, and that's actually sort of what the Ogier latched onto to come to this world. And then the steading sort of popped up in and around the portal stones as a byproduct of the Ogier coming to our world. And it was like a sounding fork.
The Book of Translation is an atlas explaining the symbols on the portal stones and a roadmap to different realities, and that's how they're able to do it.
It's entirely possible.
So that would also mean that the Book of Translation and their travel from reality to reality is restricted only to worlds that are connected via portal stone, which could be finite or infinite.
Maybe, because again, it's also, that also implies that the Book of Translation is literally just an almanac, and that it legitimately only has. I mean that yes, calling it the Book of Translation.
This is now my headcanon for the Book of Translation. This is now my headcanon for it.
But it might also be a book that explains the theory behind it as well, which would then presumably allow you to go to places without portal stones, if you could unlock that theory, to the extent of actually being able to manipulate that, rather than just going to the places where people have already manipulated that, if that makes sense.
Well,
but yeah, no, I really like that idea, and it feels to me like that would kind of make sense that humans at some point also had sort of a Book of Translation, and it has been lost, which is why nobody has any idea how to use these portal stones. And the Ogier are unknowingly, in some ways, sitting on the secrets of the portal stones.
Yeah, well, so the way I kind of think about the portal stones being made is this is a very relatable example for most people that have ever played, I don't know, even the cheapest of PC games. Well, maybe not the cheapest, but Minecraft. When you make a nether portal in the overworld, it automatically creates one in the nether. So I'm kind of thinking now that when a portal stone is made or appears or whatever, that it kind of does the same thing. That whenever it's made and it's inscribed with the different locations it can reach, that a portal stone is also created in those areas.
Okay.
And the Book of Translation, even though its exact purpose has been forgotten, it's maintained the name. And when I think about things in the Wheel of Time that are able to transport people to different worlds, be they planets, other planets, or realities, because there's still technically nothing saying that there's not a portal stone undiscovered or buried in Randland that could take you to, fucking Earth-like
Jupiter,
planet
yeah.
716 or whatever. Hopefully
Yeah,
not
no,
Jupiter.
exactly.
You'll fucking die. But you get what I mean.
That's
That maybe
what
the
think.
Book of Translation translates those symbols into, okay, you're tired of living in this world? Well, the fancy stones with the symbols, go find this one and take the crooked line with the up arrow to the other portal stone, then take the one with the ball sack separated from the penis to this other world, and you'll find yourself at a pretty decent place to live.
Right.
That it's like hey, these are what the different symbols mean, and like they tie into these worlds, and so it translates the hieroglyphs, if you will, of the portal stones into more usable tech. Or not tech, but more usable
Text.
language. Yeah, text.
Yeah.
For the Ogier. And then that's part of also why like people are able to figure it out. Because who's to say that that part of the reason why the ways inspired the portal stones inspired the use of the ways was some half insane Ashaman or male Aes Sedai sneaking peeks at the Book of Translation.
Yep, it's definitely a thought. And I mean, like, again, it's also true that it's an interesting parallel that, again, they went to the steading.
Mm-hmm.
They stayed in the steading. They then immediately went out of the steading and built the ways right on the edges of it. They don't
it
even
fits with why they think the Ogier would
to...
like that idea. Because it would fit with the portal stone. It's like, okay, here's how you could do that without opening your Book of Translation here, so you can go around to the different steadings and groves and commune as a people. It fucking makes I think it makes so much sense. I'm so excited. I gotta go use the restroom real quick. I'm listening, but go.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I love about the sort of this general theory is, what if it wasn't even necessarily a Mad Aes Sedai reading the Book of Translation? What if it was literally, the Rand al'Thor Luz Therin type of connection, where some Aes Sedai, in their madness, connects with their old self and knows what this is because they were there when they were made.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were there when the Ogier shared the Book of Translation with humanity, or when humanity had their own Book of Translation, or, whatever the fuck that was, if you will. Because the Ogier are, like, pretty protective of the Book of Translation, which makes 100% sense knowing what it is. Like, they're absolutely right in being very protective of this. But still, like, Rand is a special case, and I get that and I appreciate that, but he gets in touch with his old self and has this moment of realizing things that he absolutely should not know because he gets so I don't know what in touch with or like crossed over with or whatever his past self that he like opens up a wealth of knowledge that Rand al'Thor shouldn't have. What if that happened with another Ashima or with another Aes Sedai in the past, and now and at that point they were in a steading, and so they just like had all of this knowledge of what the steading was and why the Ogier were here and what had happened in the past and everything. Like, yeah, it's God, so much stuff.
Dude, I am so ridiculously excited about this idea. Like, there's that part of me that's like, I really hope, like, you know, somebody's had this idea and talked about it before, I guarantee it. But you also kind of hope nobody has. Because it's like that idea that seems to tie so much together that you're just like, I feel like I've discovered in something, like we've discovered something incredible.
Yeah.
And I now love it. Yeah, we have mentioned that the flicker wasn't entirely intentional, but that something was
No, it
going
was
wrong.
100% not intentional. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I say not necessarily intentional because they didn't mean for that to happen, but it might have been like the error in the way that Rand was weaving. Well,
yeah, no, exactly.
It's either that or it was like Shaitan being like, "Hey, Ishi, watch this."
So that was actually my third question earlier, and so I'm going to ask it now because you just brought it up, and I sort of love that idea. Is presumably, again, thinking about it in the sort of infinite multiverse theory, Rand only sees a smattering of lives, and it's not even that many as far as we sort of get to read about. But at the same time, it's at least 3, and it suggests,
well, 3,
so
and
it's
then the last one's like countless lives, yeah, where it's
exactly
like the generic.
And so again,
here's a gleam and a blah 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 blah.
Yeah. No, exactly. And so we see 3 that he like legitimately lives, and then he sees a boatload of other lives that he sort of lives. And again, it seems to suggest that at the end of every life, he hears, "I have won again, Lews Therin."
Yeah.
So this is now sort of the question of, do you think, Andrew, that he is misattributing that and this is just his fear talking and it's these other lives are going so fast that he just assumes they all end with that, or whether Robert Jordan is making the reader not read through 1,000 lives, but of course Rand actually lives all of these lives in exactly the same way that he lives the first 3. They all end with "I have won again, Lews Therin." Do you think that these other worlds that he's experiencing, this world that Rand is in, is sort of one of, if not the only one, where Shaitan doesn't beat him? Or do you think that Shaitan is putting his finger on the scale and affecting what lives Rand sees so that it feels hopeless? That, he's only seeing the ones where Shaitan wins to make him feel like he's already lost. Like there is no hope. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts sort of as far as that is concerned? Because that's actually one of the other...
Another wrench in the possibilities here in just a second.
Okay.
So, to answer one of the questions, I think he that RJ just, one, saved himself from having to write hundreds of different lives or dozens of different lives. Because he's like, after 3, you kind of get the point of where we're going here.
Yeah.
But I think he did, in fact, live all of these lives. I
That's
think
my theory as well.
when it comes to Shaitan's influence or possible influence, it has to be one or two things. The one, and probably I think the most likely, is what you were hinting at, that he tips the scales to influence through like bubble of evil, that Rand experiences the ones where he loses to sway him into thinking that it's hopeless, because he lives dozens of lives, if not hundreds of lives, where he loses. If they're real. Alternatively, if Shaitan is manufacturing these to fuck with everybody, then we also have to assume that the ones at the end are also just illusions. But the wrench that I might throw in this is, what if it's not the Dark One doing it at all? What if it is the creator doing a scared straight to everybody?
I was literally just thinking the same thing in
Yeah.
terms of what if it's because my thought when you just said sort of Shaitan, like, you know, showing that is that he ends up shooting himself in the foot if he actually does that, because like again, Ingtar and Varen like turn around and go, not today, motherfucker. Like
it has the opposite. Like, you would think it would dissuade them, but Ingtar turns back to the light. Varen, I don't think Varen ever turned against the light, but it galvanized her to do things a specific way. It galvanizes Matt's loyalty to Rand, and it galvanizes Perrin's loyalty to them as well, but also his acceptance of his special ability. And in the end, I think it also galvanizes Rand into, I must do what must be done, because in every other life I've lived, everything else I try fails. So all I can do is fight the Dark One. So I think it's very much, now that I think about it, I think it's more likely that the creator had a hand in making things go wonky. If it wasn't just Rand channeling wrong and not knowing how to use the portal stones, which is,
well, it's
I still think
definitely
the easiest
at least part that,
yeah. But now, like, no, I think the creator had a hand in it. Now, I still think that they are real worlds.
Yeah,
I think it's maybe the creator's way of showing Rand, and by extension everybody else that is with him,
what the stakes are.
Like, if you make different choices, how wrong it goes. Because nobody comes away from this going, "Oh yeah, I had some incredible lives." Everybody comes away from this going, "What the fuck?"
Right?
Like, I gotta. Like, it is literally a near death experience
overwhelming
for everybody.
Nature of it, but also,
it's literally that near death experience that makes somebody, like, you always hear the stories about people that go into a situation, they're a complete and total like atheist or skeptic or whatever the case is, and they come out of a situation where they almost died or something crazy happened, and they're like, you know, they're completely turned around, and now like they're a believer in like Christ, or they're a believer in like the Hindu gods, or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. So
so I will say again, he comes with the wine, and again, another plug for Patreon. You bring up a good point of sort of, wasn't there something about the Dark One needing to win only once? That is absolutely a theory, and it's definitely one that is brought up in the books multiple times. Now, this is three things about that. Number one, unreliable narrator. It's the easy answer, and it's a bit of a cop-out, but I appreciate it as always existing, because it's one of the reasons that I fucking love these stories, is that everything that you hear in the Wheel of Time is suspect, because everything is always said by a human, and humans are fucking idiots. But a lot of what we hear as far as that is concerned is from humans, of like they're theorizing or philosophically like postulating about what happens if the shadow wins and like the Dark One breaks free and blah 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 blah. But it's sort of the idea of
wins in any of the mirror worlds.
Well, and that's sort of the question is,
I think those are worlds where, like, at best, he fought the light to a draw. Because, like, even in the world that Rand and Selene and everybody are in, like, they don't see any other people, but they're still alive because there's a Grom still there, which, of course, is our peek into, like, the Shan-Chan got all their creatures from alternate worlds. Or at least most of their creatures, some of their creatures.
Or something, yeah.
Well, we know that the Grom and believe the Rockin' and Toe Rockin' come from mirror worlds. I don't know if we
Presumably.
know about the Shredded. So
Yeah. It's also completely it's entirely possible that the mirror worlds actually got their animals from Shantae as well. Like it's not clearly stated as either. Though it definitely makes more sense for them to have gotten their creatures from mirror worlds than the other way around, even though it's never clearly stated one way or
if
the
they
other.
did get them from the mirror worlds, how badly did they fuck up in the mirror world to like no longer mess with that? Like, oh, we went into one and like literally half the empire. Like that's how they killed the Trollocs. They opened a mirror world against the blight and it wiped out the Trollocs, and they're like, not going back in there again.
Right. But yeah, so again, it's sort of this idea, going back to sort of what you brought up, he who comes with the wine. This is a theory that in our world, quote unquote, the one that the story represents, which is just a number of turnings or a certain amount of time or whatever in the future from our current timeline.
Yeah.
That if the Dark One wins here, the wheel gets destroyed. But again, this is one of those questions of, in a sort of multiverse, infinite multiverse like situation, that actually kind of suggests that the Dark One has to win everywhere, not just in one place. Because again, if the Champion of the Light wins in one multiverse, then the wheel keeps turning. And so again, it's the sort of, is this Earth Prime, where this one is the one that matters and all other multiverses are like weird shades of Earth Prime that kind of don't matter? Or is this a situation where every multiverse is exactly as viable as any others?
Mhm.
And the only reason that Rand and Celine and Huron and Loyal see the other mirror world as weird is because it's not theirs. And they're further outside of their own reality. So again, this sort of theory of the Dark One only has to win once gets so complicated so fast in so many different ways. And so
I think
again,
it goes both
depending
ways.
on what camp you fall in, it just becomes super complicated as to, okay, well, if you think that, now what do you think about this particular thing? And if you think that, then what do you think about this particular thing? Because there are so many possibilities. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
No, you're fine. I think it goes both ways. I think both the light only has to win once, and I think that the dark one only has to win once. I think what happens far more often in these mirror worlds is a draw, where the dark one gets pushed away from creation or blocked off from that world or whatever the case is, but the forces of the light are largely or mostly destroyed. Because think about it, if the dark one wins once, he destroys the wheel and everything that makes creation, and all of creation is gone. Doesn't matter where he does that because you have to reach outside of space time to do it. There's only one origin point of creation to destroy. But for the light to win, you also have to reach outside of space and time and seal away the guy trying to do that. So if you do that and you seal him away from space time, he is sealed away from it in every world at the same time. Like he can't touch anything because you were sealing him outside of reality. So I think all the mirror worlds are all the different possibilities of what could happen in between the dark one being unsealed and him being sealed again. And it's just different variations of different choices made by the influential souls that matter, and ultimately it winds up being a giant tapestry roadmap. If you could look far enough out and zoom far enough out to read it, of here is the clear path in the maze to get to victory. But neither the Dark One nor the dragon can see that far out. In fact, I think only the creator can probably see all of creation, whereas the Dark One has to hunt through it, and that's why he like crawls through different realities. But which then necessitates, if there's an infinite number of potential realities, then there's an infinite number of things the Dark One has to crawl through. So it's equally as possible as it is impossible for the Dark One to win, just like it is equally probable, but also equally improbable that the light will win. So, yeah.
It's fucking...
Yeah, and we know that from the
Question
different worlds.
for you, Andrew.
I'm bringing this up because Wine just brought this up about the effects in the different worlds. Across the different worlds, time moves differently, faster or slower, in relation to. I like the phrase "Ranland Prime." I like that phrase.
Yeah.
Which is the Ranland we're reading in the story. So they may have sealed the Dark One away now, but in Ranland Alternate Universe 567,243. It's still another 8,000 years from now before the Dark One's sealed away. And in that time, he scratches his tainty butthole across all of what they know of creation. He scratches his taint with the Mountain of Doom, or the Dragon Mount. It's like a toothpick for his butthole, because he's an asshole. I don't know why I said toothpick for his butthole, but yeah. So yeah, question. What's up?
What
the fuck? Sorry, the gift.
God, I think I forgot my question because.
Let me ask, what do you
doesn't
think?
Happen very often.
Yeah. What do you think? So coming back to the Flicker worlds and everything, do you think they? And apologies if you actually did answer this, because generally I've been answering questions and you keep asking them. And I want to give you a chance to actually answer it too. Do you think that the Flicker worlds? I believe you nodded yes, that you think they are reality. That they did actually live in, and if so, why?
Yeah, so I did sort of answer this at the beginning, sort of quickly, because of course, again, I didn't want to sit there and give the question and go into a lot of context, and then also sit there and answer it for like 20
Pontificate.
minutes.
That is my word of the night. Pontificate.
Right, I am also very much in the camp of the mirror, or the Flicker scenes are real. That out there somewhere in the multiverse, out there somewhere in the sort of line of parallel universes, that a Rand has lived this life and or is living this life. And that the portal stone gives Rand access to be able to see that, as you said, sort of like the window into a submarine or the window into a building. And he's not really being able to affect anything, obviously, because again, it's not his conscience, it's not, whatever. It's just his senses, if you will, that are being transported to that place and living that life. But I am also very much in that camp of all of the mirror worlds that they're seeing in those flickers are lives that a Rand somewhere in the multiverse has lived or is living, and that Rand is just getting that pumped into Randland Prime's head, and seeing everything that's going on. And I also actually love the headcanon, and I think it's mine too now, of the creator kind of putting his finger on the scale.
He flips the switch from the unfucky to the fucky for the portal.
And basically shows all of these people sort of the worst of themselves, knowing... Actually, so this is actually one of the things that I wanted to say real quick, is I actually really love... I sort of take back what I said, but also not, because I actually love the thought of the creator knows humans because they made them. And the Dark One doesn't know humans because they're so foreign to the Dark One. And so that's actually my thought process, as far as it kind of doesn't matter which one of them was the one actually putting their finger on the scale. Because when it comes right down to it, I love the theory that either the creator knows humanity so well as to say, if I show them the worst of humanity, these humans will become the best of humanity. Or the Dark One not understanding humans so badly that he thinks, well, if I show them their worst selves, they'll just be their worst selves or be paralyzed with, that information or whatever, not realizing that humans are more optimistic and hopeful. And that if you show them their worst selves, they're more likely to become their best selves. So I actually kind of love the idea of it doesn't matter which one of them did it. It's the same result for different reasons.
Yeah. Fuck. What is the name? There's an anime that is a perfect analogy for this. Hold on, let me find it. What is the name of this? Because I just fucking watched it. Anos Voltigode is the character I'm looking for. Hold on. Anime Anos Voltigode. And he is from the anime The Misfit of Demon King Academy. So quick premise. 2,000 years ago, Demon King, most powerful guy in the world. And in order to attain peace, he did masterful magic, or origin magic, to reincarnate himself in 2,000 years after there was peace on Earth.
I flung him into a portal where I, Aku.
Yeah. So there comes a point after his reincarnation where he goes into a fighting tournament against, he's a misfit commoner, they call him mixed blood. He's not pure royal blood.
Sure.
And he's fighting a royal who has this like stereotypical ego about you're lesser than me, blah blah blah, and just defeating him is considered defiance. And the royal is like, I will never give up, and even if I die. And he's just like, oh, really? And he snaps his fingers and blows the guy away and kills him. And he's like, oh, I even held back. And then he does another spell and drops like a drop of blood on the ground and resurrects the guy. And then the guy's like, what the fuck just happened? He's like, I killed you. And the guy's like, fuck you. And he goes and kills him again.
And he dies again.
And resurrects him again. And he keeps doing this. And he basically, at the end, as he's doing this, killing him and bringing him back effortlessly, he just keeps like basically talking about like his version of the ship of Theseus, like thought experiment.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an interesting theory about resurrected humans. Like, are you still the same person? Yeah. And eventually the noble is like begging him to stop. Like, please, I surrender, blah, blah, blah. Of course, he comes back as an asshole later and gets killed and then resurrected again, along with his brother. But it makes me think, like, it doesn't paint which there's no reason for the creator to be painted in, like, a merciful light. There's nothing about being the good guy that means you have to be merciful. I mean, just look at the Old Testament.
Well, also, again, remember that we, at least, have talked about this before, is that, personally, I follow the idea that the creator is called good because people appreciate order and they fear chaos.
But again, it's sort of have the illusion of free choice. So he's good.
Sure, but to me, it's more about sort of that idea of people actually do enjoy order more than chaos because, chaos is more frightening in some ways. Yeah, no, exactly. And so I feel like, again, the creator is never actually like it. The creator never claims itself as being good. It's just order versus chaos. And so again, sort of the idea of like them being good or evil isn't necessarily fair. It's just that people seem to gravitate towards order more, and so that's viewed as good, and fear chaos, so that's viewed as bad.
Yeah. So to tie in to fully round out the anime reference to the Demon and Misfit Academy.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. The creator, I think, was doing the same shit. They're like, Ingtar's like, I'm gonna be a dark friend, and he's like, but what if you die? And then
The
Utar's
fuck
like,
you
I'm
are.
still gonna be a dark friend. But what if you also die this way? And it's like, here's all the choices you could make. We're not gonna let them know that these are just all the wrong choices. But here's all the choices you can make, and you still die. Things go badly for you if you stay on the track that you are. And it's that kind of brutal, like some people, like now we call it tough love in some circumstances, letting people like, deal with the ramifications of their actions, especially when they're negative. But this is like tailored in a way to only show you the bad consequences of your I don't want you to make that choices. Yeah, no, actually,
Again,
yeah.
it's the scared
I'm
straight.
I'm fully on it because
Yeah.
that also leads in with the idea of balance from the entire series. That if this whole thing is done by the creator to push everybody to make the right decisions that favor creation, then we get the balance at the end of Shaitan showing Rand other realities to show
Yeah.
him the bad side
Ooh.
of everything. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
like that.
I think we've made some revelations
I
that
think
don't
we
in
have
the
as
book
well.
in the Bible in this episode. So,
I mean, we kind of do. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in Revelation, so we may
I
be
mean,
referencing it. I
there
don't fucking
is.
know.
I mean, apparently the brass section comes out and is pissed. So
Yeah, right.
that's why you don't piss off the brass section.
All right. So, yeah, fucking my mind is already blown. And I don't have any capacity for it to be blown anymore. I have
I kind of
already...
wish that I could like watch Josh's face, like if he goes back and listens to this episode.
Hey Josh, can you record yourself listening to this episode and fucking losing your shit?
Yeah. Hey Josh, when you're editing this, feel free to go ahead and like record yourself reacting to parts of this episode. If you could do like a 10 to 15 minute reaction to like what you feel are like the most like interesting parts of this episode, that would be hilarious. A reaction to our own episode.
Right.
Okay, look, guys, I love it. I love that you had a great episode. I love everything about what you're saying. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I understand. The Black Tower has us, doing some crazy things at sometimes. In this particular case, I was out, scouting and recruiting. But I will say, though, this is a fantastic string of logic to put together. And talking about the Book of Translation as sort of an atlas that navigates the different worlds. Dope. I love it. I also love, Andrew, what you're saying about the portal stones. You'd have to have like some kind of... You'd be able to travel to other worlds connected by the portal stones. I mean, I feel like that makes sense. Anyway. Great episode, guys. I'm actually kind of sad I missed it. I'm editing right now and being like, oh my gosh, there's so many things. Like Varen, she tells Egwene that there are hundreds and hundreds and millions of different worlds, but only one creator and only one dark one. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting. That's interesting stuff. That's what we like to talk to. So, I guess I just grabbed this right over on the side, I guess, and just...
Jesus. Have we actually acquired that level of notoriety where we can react to our own episodes?
I mean, even the channels
Honestly,
I've seen
after
do it
doing
don't
it for 5
necessitate
years,
notoriety.
Yeah, I was going to say, after you've done it for 5 years, I feel like it's the longevity rather than necessarily the notoriety. Yeah. But, that being said...
We've been here long enough to be able to do it.
Basically. All right. Well... I'm tired. I'm sure you all are tired. I know Andrew's tired. Let's go ahead and round this this episode out.
That's
as far as sort of just right there. You go. I see what you did there.
Code BTP at w.gg, 10% off.
Indeed. But let's go ahead and round this out sort of with final thoughts. I will just do mine sort of in general. I love these books. I love these books so much. And part of that is, again, sort of the idea that Robert Jordan and then later Brandon Sanderson, because he seems to have not shied away from a number of these sort of like possibilities and probabilities and all of that. So I feel like either he was given very good notes by Robert Jordan and he followed them well, or he had a healthy amount of this, physics and philosophy and theology and everything in him as well. I think that it's incredibly well done in this series. Like, don't get me wrong, any large scale series, like, your Star Warses and your Lord of the Rings and your Wheel of Times and your, even things like Game of Thrones and whatnot, you can find things that are like this, of just like questions that you can rabbit hole down. Because they're sprawling enough that there's just a lot going on. But I will continue forever, hopefully, I don't know, maybe, of thinking that the Wheel of Time is one of the best examples of that. I really think that Robert Jordan did a masterclass in terms of making you question goddamn everything in his story, as far as how it works, why it works, what's going on, whether you can believe the person who's talking, whether you can believe the laws of physics that you think that like all of that different stuff. And
I still can't believe it's not butter.
Right? And so I will thoroughly enjoy continuing having these sort of metaphysical discussions about so many different things, and all of these different sort of tangents and thought process and philosophies and whatnot in this book series, because this discussion between Andrew and I and all of you in Patreon chat just gave me more questions. I mean, it answered some, and again, a lot of this is just sort of opinion. Like, part of the whole
shoddy questions.
Kill me in the face. No, but so many of these, are just opinions, and I love that about them, because there isn't a right answer. I mean, there might be, in terms of what Robert Jordan actually specifically thought about these different things, but like, even then, in some ways, there's not necessarily a right answer. I love hearing people's opinions. I love hearing people's thoughts. Again, I had opinions on this topic, and I let them rip as far as this episode is concerned, and then Andrew opened his mouth and gave me new thoughts. Like, again, whether they're my new headcanon or just like different new aspects that I fucking love, doesn't really matter. Like, this is just a fascinating discussion, and I love them. Anyway, that's basically my, little bit of circle jerk about fucking The Wheel of Time is amazing, and you should, anybody who hasn't read it already, first of all, why are you still here? We spoiler warned you at the beginning, but also I'm glad that you're still here and read, because when you think critically about this series, there is always more to pull, and it's amazing. So anyway, sorry.
I love the phrase, my circle jerk about fucking the Wheel of Time.
Right.
Because it's like a circle. There are no ends.
Right?
No, I love
like
these.
A centipede. Yeah. No ends.
Ew. Too many ends. There's too many. I can't believe they actually made didn't they make like 3 of those? I know there was at least 2. There was a sequel to the first one. I think they made 2 or 3 of them. It's like, that's 2 or 3 more than ever needed. These are the kind of discussions that I kind of looked forward to and wanted and had in mind when we started the podcast. The picking a topic and talking about it, and when we get into things like this that are more metaphysical, it's like the worlds are your oyster kind of thing, because where there were fucking hell. God damn. So when we talk about things, if we do a character breakdown from the books, there, for 90 to 95% of it, there are right and wrong answers. There are right and wrong statements. There are right and wrong ideas for 90 to 95% of it. When it comes to things that aren't fully explained or aren't completely explained or have an inherent air of mystique about them, and I don't mean the X-Men character, though she's welcome to join. I'm sure there's a mirror world where Mystique's running around turning into Trollocs, and giving
Damn
people
straight.
confusing boners about people in blue jumpsuits. Maybe confusing, maybe completely rational. Who knows? Depends on how versed you are in Snapchat. Anyway, that was really bad. Anyway, sorry, Jennifer. Because obviously, she listens to the podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a kind of feeling of openness to the metaphysics discussions, right? There are still right and wrong answers. There are still right and wrong theories, but it's more so dependent on the presuppositions or assumptions that you're going to operate off of, and the questions and answers that Robert Jordan has done. But the fun things about these discussions, whether we're actively talking face to face, or we're talking over Zoom or StreamYard or whatever, or we're interacting with Patreon chat, especially when the fact checker Mahale can be here, and everybody else can be here, because like we tout Morshadi all the time, but he's not the only one that brings up like really good points and reminds us that we're wrong. He just does it the most and has done it probably the longest. It's equally fun, at least in my opinion, to be. I'm so distracted now. Sorry. It's equally fun to be shown wrong, and to be shown like how you have the wrong assumption, because it opens up a new train of thought for you. But it's also equally fantastic to be shown right, or to be shown like where you're on at least a not wrong track.
Yep.
And these metaphysics discussions, these more theoretical discussions, are one of the rare forms where we can do that. And it's ultimately stems from asking a simple question. The initial question was, were the flicker scenes real, or were they dreams or illusions? And out of it, we got an idea of how the portal stones interact with the book of translation or the book of changes, and how all that shit works, and the nature of the old gear, and why they exist, and why the male Aes Sedai were even studying them, and all the shit. We got that.
Magnets. How does that work?
Yeah. Isn't that a quote from like fucking like one of the dudes from ICP or some shit? Yeah.
It's SNL.
Oh god, yeah. And then we got that, and then we got like blaming the creator for the flicker scenes. Like, it's just always so much fun, because there is no right or wrong answers. There are more right and more wrong answers.
Well, there's more evidentiary and less evidentiary, I would probably say.
There you go. That's a better way. That's what I meant to say. Well, that's what I meant when I said what I said. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely. Thank you. But it's just a ton of fun, and it's really nice to know that after 5 years we're still doing this kind of shit, and that we're still like, it's not a stagnant conversation about like, oh yeah, I've heard that theory. Oh yeah, no, that's cool, that's interesting. It's
right.
Talking at least once a week, every week for the past 5 years, whatever 5 times 52 is. That's what, 262 weeks.
Yeah, I will admit, I don't think we've quite gotten there yet, because we did miss weeks in that first season, second season, third season. But again, like, it's 5 times 5 is 250. So, or sorry, 5 times 50 is 250. So you're not off by much. Like,
260. It helps if I do times, not divided. 260 weeks, give or take. Plenty that we've missed or taken off, or whatever the case is. It's still fun. And you all listening, whether it's live in Patreon chat, or whether it is after the fact on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, you guys help make it all the more worth it, because your comments and your input in the live chat definitely bring about more ideas and more questions, and we encourage it. Please do. Please tweet at us, comment on the video, comment on the podcast episode, send us messages, talk about it in the Discord. We do have a channel specifically for that in the Discord under the common room. We have a channel called BTP Episode Spoiler Discussion where you can talk about whatever we talk about in the episode. Please do it. And if you have ideas for future episodes, just hit us up and let us know. But I think that will do it for us. Again, the Soravan Mahale, who's out and about in the field doing Soravan Mahale things, sends his love and appreciation for y'all tuning in. I feel the same way as your Bijan Mahale, as the Bijan Mahale, whatever you want to talk about it as the guy with the delusions of being the Bijan Mahale, whatever. I've been Andrew.
And I have been the man with the delusions of being your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel. And again, from all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up and conducting yourselves in an orderly fashion as you receive your weekly dose of taint. We hope that you have left this episode just a little bit more insane than you entered it as. And from all of us here, we hope that you're having a lovely morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
See what I did there with the... I made it dark in my room for good night. Yeah. Fucking auto white balance has got to be figured out.
I like it. I think it's fun.